that the meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. A recording of the meeting will be available afterwards on the Council's YouTube channel. In addition, other people may film, record, post on social media, or blog from this meeting. The use of any such images or sound recordings is not under the Council's control. May I remind councillors to please switch your microphones off when you're not speaking. Thank you. In attendance today, we have Officer Darrell Birch, who's the Assistant Director of Neighbourhoods, Derek Hayden, Communities Manager, Ed Leddy Owen, Team Manager for Environment, Ed Palmer, Communications and Customer Services Manager. And we also have in attendance Councillor Jonathan Wheeler as the portfolio holder. I would now like to move to the first item on the agenda. Apologies for absence. No apologies have been received. Declarations of interest. Councillor Barney.
Yeah, just on item 4, carbon management plan, just to say again, as I always do, I work for a company that's working with zero emission fuels and zero carbon technologies, which operates in Rushcliffe and indeed Nottinghamshire, but we have no involvement with Rushcliffe Borough Council.
Minutes of the meeting held on 22nd January. I'm hoping everybody had the chance to read the minutes. They were very comprehensive. A big thank you to Emma. It was quite an important meeting and the notes were very detailed. Is everybody okay with the minutes?
Yeah.
Can I have a show of hands, please? Okay, thank you. Minutes approved. We'll move to the first item on the agenda, which is the carbon management plan update. Can I please invite Officer Leddy Owen to do his presentation? Oh, but Derek to do his presentation.
Thank you, Councillor Parekh. I'm just going to do a very brief overview of the introductory report, and then I'm going to pass it over to Edward to do the substantive PowerPoint presentation. This is our 5th year, so 2020, and then 5 years subsequent scrutiny presentations, and we cover the report, the activity over the last year, and then the monitoring. It is important to know in terms of the dashboard figures that we will cover covers the period up to last April, up to 2025, because we're always a couple of months after year end to crunch all the energy data. So whilst we will talk about during the course of the presentation this evening all the work that we've done over the last 12 months, there's obviously a lag with the statistical data in terms of where we are. The report recommends that the Community Group take note of the progress to date of the adopted action management plan and the priority projects for the forthcoming financial year. So it'll be a little bit looking at what we've done this year and then what we plan to do over the next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. So yes, our journey as of this year, and as Derek has already said, I very frustratingly will not have this year's figures until approximately the middle to the end of this month. Is where I get to lock myself away in a lovely dark room and crunch every single kilowatt hour that this council has burnt, spent, run around with. So up to date, we are obviously split into 2 main key areas. There is our as a council business function target of 2030, and then there's our statutory target set by national government to be net zero as a borough by 2050. The major milestones to date this year have been very, very, very last minute. Is the Rushcliffe Arena solar project, which is the current enabling works, which are things like the scaffolding and the cleaning and the repair and preparation is currently underway on that, which is has been a very fraught last minute project, but thankfully it's now all good and underway. We have completed the major retrofit decarbonisation works at Cotgrave, at Sir Julian Khan and Gampston Community Hall, which has removed old style fossil fuel systems. So not only were these fossil fuel, but they were also very inefficient non-condensing boilers, which basically means the majority of the heat generated is going straight out the chimney. But having new heat pump systems in. It's they're well insulated now. They're running beautifully, and particularly close to my heart is the Tumbling Tots group are finally extremely happy and warm with what's going off at Gampston. So that was when they were happy, we were happy. Now, a huge milestone is the 90% reduction in fleet emissions. So that's all of our heavy fleet, the bin lorries and the large fleet at Streetwise are now running on HVO, that's hydrogenated vegetable oil. And the greenhouse gas conversion factors on that, which I use to crunch these figures, it's a 9% reduction of 800 tonnes. You basically divide that by 12. That's how many homes you've taken off out of Rushcliffe. A huge project, which is now underway, is because we are having to carry out essential key operations within the borough that cannot be completely decarbonised in time for the 2030 target. The offsetting through the gaining of the woodlands, that's the Rushcliffe and Woldswood, will now set us in approximately 5 years' time. I mean, it will start now, but the key outputs will be ready in 5 years, which will give us that literal breathing space to mop up the carbon that will be emitted through having to empty bins and essential services through mainly through the fleet. Operations that are going on within the borough. So yes, it's very important that the council gets net zero. However, the top right hand graph there shows you you don't have to worry about the how many tons, because these are in kilotons, but the majority of the carbon is done through all the operations. Around 40% is housing, and so we're very keen to work with national, regional partners to deliver decarbonisation fuel poverty schemes such as the Warm Homes Local Grant and Energy Company Obligation. We work very closely with the Nottingham Energy Partnership to deliver these schemes, particularly on the eco side, because that is focusing on people that are fuel poor and have a medical condition. The Warm Homes Local Grant, again, E.ON, a technical local business, and our customer journey support on that has been done through the Nottingham Energy Partnership as well. And that so far is just continuing to be really, really fruitful, and will carry on for another 2 years, addressing those that need it the most within Rushcliffe. Carrying on the expansion of our rapid and medium charge electric vehicle charge points, we have successfully procured a zero amount contract to have rapid and medium chargers put in at Bridgeford Road and Nursery Road car parks in the middle of West Bridgeford, which will be a key infrastructure upgrade and continue having, I think, one of the largest infrastructures outside of the city. So I'm very proud of that. We've also hosted from the Home Energy Advice Team a pilot project, which is essentially funded and again delivered by the Nottingham Energy Partnership, a Home Energy Advice Team 2. And what that has allowed is the facilitation of practical, comprehensive advice for the able to pay market within Rushcliffe. So local interested homeowners will come along, see what's available, understand it, and from that get a retrofit assessment done on their property, which costs between £200 to £500, giving them a good blueprint that can be used to decarbonise their home in their own time. And again, we're working with key partners. So we're all aware of the Rushcliffe Country Park and the wonderful amenity that it is, but we're working closely with our neighbours next door at the Railway Heritage Centre to broker an ethical solar loan through Solar Share, so that they can then start to future-proof, because they are a very electric hungry site and they need a way of doing that while there are no grants currently available. So to put all that on paper, this is what we've got. We've gone from 2008, when the statistics were being recorded. We're now down to 308 tonnes. So that is a 1,489 tonne drop. Yeah, great. What does that mean? Well, to give that a kind of visualization, it's basically taking 5 old Cotgrave swimming pools off the grid forever. And that's around about 124 properties taken out of Rushcliffe forever in terms of that's the average 3-bedroom home, 2.5 kids, that kind of thing. So it really is, from what we have achieved within this organisation, that's a lot of carbon that has been stopped and allowed us to get very, very close to the target. So getting there and achieving this, so as I've already discussed, and Derek will come on to this in more detail later, there is the offsetting through the sequestration and the planting of the woodlands within the Upper Broughton and Kinalton sites. It's looking at our own stock now, because we've done a lot of the big hitters. So the swimming pools have been done. I mean, there is still one big hitter there, but it's about finding out where we've got the smaller areas. So there are things like the sheltered scheme down at the Hound Lodge. Looking at that, yes, it might not be huge, but all these little wins will start to add up big in the long run. A very key area that we're going to be looking at, and this is the elephant in the room for all fellow local authorities up and down the country, and businesses for that matter, is Scope 3 emission recording. So to put that into perspective, it's if you buy a pen, or you buy a new lorry, or you buy a new set of chemicals for doing the swimming pool, we want to have a nationally recognised way of recording those emissions and developing strategies through procurement, through supply chain, through, for example, there's a company we work with, Preludic, that do the playgrounds. They already have very interesting models in place that map and minimise their Scope 3 by maximising their efficiencies in their delivery mechanisms and things like that. So that's going to be a big thing to get stuck into next year. So going to hand over to Derek now just to talk about the woods that have been really underway. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. I just wanted to give a little bit of background because we had some questions and queries in relation to our offsetting. So obviously following our work and what Ed has alluded to, we calculated that we would approximately need to offset 360 tonnes. If we decarbonised everything and worked really hard on our buildings, assets, and got everything that we think we could achieve from the 2008 target, we would equivalent have about 10% remaining. So we calculated that would be about 360 tonnes, because Darrell will still need to run his fleet vehicles. We will still have to turn on the lights. We will still be producing carbon. So one of the most effective ways to do that is to offset. So we proposed an offsetting strategy in the 14th of May, which was presented to Cabinet 2024, which set that out. So our senior ecologist looked at and did a comprehensive review of all of the land that the Borough Council owns. The Borough Council doesn't have a lot of land holdings, unlike other local authority areas. So we assess for opportunities. We've got a couple of small farms, but they're in tenancies, they're in farming tenancies, long-term tenancies, so they weren't available. We looked at what open spaces we had, but obviously our open spaces serve a function. Some of them are football fields, some of them are open spaces, country parks, so it would be inappropriate to completely cover them in woodlands or that, because obviously they play a really important function. So that was one thing that we couldn't do. So then we looked to work with partner organisations, so charities, other local authorities, to see about their land holdings and could we work on something together to look offset our emissions. And then finally was the purchase of land. So we looked at 3 types of, so when we're thinking about offsetting, they are woodlands, wetlands and meadows. Woodlands provide the best carbon opportunity for offsetting because they suck in as much carbon and they store it for approximately 100 years. So it meets that requirement and it provides the biggest return. So based on that, we looked at land availability. So we looked across the whole borough of Rushcliffe. So as a part of that Cabinet report that was approved, Cabinet took the decision we could look at a mountain in Scotland. Land values are cheaper, and we could look to offset there. However, Cabinet were clear that they wanted to, the impact of our operations in the borough, they wanted to look within the borough boundaries so that the people in the borough would be of benefit for those habitats that we would create. So we overlaid that with the biodiversity opportunities mapping. So it's a really interesting map of Rushcliffe, which sets out all the areas of biodiversity and where we would look to improve biodiversity as a part of our nature recovery strategy. And our senior ecologist, Paul Phillips, loves this stuff and provides some really interesting data. And obviously we're very lucky to have an ecologist working for us, and we have had one, which is not true of all local authorities in Nottingham, that provides that rich form of data. So based on that, we looked at priority sites. Another key criteria is with knowing that, and with knowing land in Rushcliffe, because obviously it's precious and there's a lot of requirements on it now, whether it be house building, agricultural land that's used for solar farms and that. So the needs are many. So what we looked at is the worst land, really. So we're looking at grade 3 agricultural land or below. So the wettest, darkest, the poorest soil quality. So we set a criteria to say that we did not want to take productive agricultural land. So grade 1, grade 2, grade 3A agricultural land, because obviously that is feeding the country. So it was really important as well that we looked for those opportunities of when land became available, that we looked at those lines. As a part of that, then we employed an independent land agent who looked at those opportunities, worked with farmers, worked with opportunities as they became available, provided evaluations for what those opportunities were. And then when those opportunities became available, and there was several sites that we looked at, when we saw a site that met our criteria, met those things about poor agricultural land, was in the opportunity mapping areas that we'd identified across the borough, and was available, we submitted those opportunities to the Asset Investment Group, which gave approval for us to start those negotiations. Simultaneously, we submitted applications to the Forest Community Trust, so it's Trees for Carbon. So there's a DEFRA grant which has been administered through Nottinghamshire County Council, where they've got a huge wodge of funding to be able to support that. So it worked really well for Rushcliffe, because we were able to acquire the land, so the capital value of the land, and then we were able to get grants for those. So when that all came together, that land, so if we could get the land at the right price, because obviously there's a land value ceiling that we wouldn't have gone beyond, there was the opportunity to did it meet the criteria for DEFRA, for granting, did it meet the criteria for grants? So when all that came together, we were successful in achieving 2 sites. So for those that are unfamiliar with the sites and the names, so Rushcliffe Woods, which is in Upper Broughton, just off the green, is a 54-acre woodland which will be created. There's some meadowland, and there's a Dalby Brook flows down to the bottom of it. So Paul, who's our ecologist, and Alistair Glenn, who's our country park manager, we've expanded his role, and he will be the country parks and open spaces. So he will be the day-to-day officer responsible for that land holding after it's been fully planted. There's some interesting features. There's Dalby Brook, which flows into Old Dalby at the bottom. So it's really quite an interesting site in terms of biodiversity and meeting our carbon reduction targets. And then Wallswood, which is just off the A46 Foss Way. It is just in front of a woodland called Canalton Gorse, and is grade 3 agricultural land, and was formerly, which was really pleasing when we did the ecological and historical mapping on it, was a former woodland about 100 years ago, and was deforested to create farmland during that time period. And now it is fantastic for Rushcliffe that we're actually returning it to woodland, and obviously been directly adjacent to an existing woodland. What that means, our initial target was 360 tonnes. Those two land holdings combined gives us approximately 440 tonnes of carbon, which we will sequester, which based on the baseline gives us a little bit of wriggle room, because we're not standing still as an organisation. We are building a CREM, for example, and Darrell is creating more fleet to deal with our simpler recycling. So it gives us that little bit of a buffer room. So it equates to 123% of what we originally said we required, to give us that little bit of flexibility should we have to take on additional duties. So work is ongoing as we speak. I was there this morning. There's deer fencing and rabbit net fencing going in, and we've managed to, on both of those sites, lever in £860,000 worth of grant funding, which is 100% of the tree planting requirement and 15 years maintenance on both sites, which is absolutely fantastic, which means obviously it's not a revenue burden for the first 15 years of their establishment. The deer and rabbit netting is to allow the trees to grow. It's important that we do this. You might say, why are we doing this in 2025, 2026? You need 5 years for those trees to grow to start to sequester the carbon. So the first couple of years, they don't sequester anything. It'll be from 2030. So by doing it now and meeting that criteria, we can hand on heart say in 2030, we should be starting to sequester that 442 tonnes off of those, which will then get attributed to our figure. So our figure of 2030, we're safe in that knowledge we've got this buffer zone that we are sequestering carbon. So if we do everything else, we should be on that. So I was asked just to cover a little bit more detail about those carbon things. So we'll be ready to ask questions at the end, but I'm going to pass back to Ed just to cover the last few slides on what we've got coming up over the next year.
Yes, thank you, Derek. So absolutely building on what Derek was just saying, we can't just say that's it, great, you know, we can rely on the sequestration, because operations will continue to expand. This is what we've got planned imminently and almost underway, followed by things that we really want to focus on and kind of address, because they are the kind of the remaining big emitters. So as I've already said earlier on in the presentation, the solar project on the top of the roof of this building, when that's all up and running, will basically remove 68 tonnes of carbon a year. And that's approximately 50% of the consumption on all of the operations within this building, which due to its nature are very high. There's a Gresham Sports Pavilion as well. It's everywhere we have a roof that's south facing. It's a really good opportunity to put in a photovoltaic system. And again, we'll be looking at upgrading the floodlighting, and that will effectively, and the water system as well, which will effectively save a further 3 tonnes of carbon a year by the on-site generation. The Ed Walton Golf Course refurbishment as well. Ed Walton has no mains gas, so it is entirely reliant on electricity. And because of that, it's a relatively high saving of 4 tonnes a year, because that's going to be running the building, running the heating and that kind of stuff. Now, the building already has high efficiency electric heating and LED lighting. So this is, you're going to maximise your return by putting, again, I think it's around about a 10 to 30 kilowatt system on there. Streetwise solar project, that Streetwise has really come on in leaps and bounds, having its own internal EV charge points that can be tapped in on, or plugged in rather more appropriately, by the existing electric fleet that we've got. They also have the new vehicle wash there, which again runs on electric. So you've got another opportunity there, probably to put in around about another 10 to 20 kilowatts, which would give a good saving and remove another tonne to tonne and a half potentially. Hound Lodge energy efficiency. This is a really good example of not everything is solar electric. Solar electricity is absolutely key and crucial because of the nature of the stock we've got. But because it already has quite modern gas central heating system, doing a complete internal and external wall insulation retrofit, along with building in and completely redoing the loft insulation, the savings on the gas will be 9 tonnes. So it's going to be a lot of saving. And because we're able to give it a really good thermal value, when it becomes more cost effective in a on gas area, it will be in a far greater position to have a air source heat pump fitted in around about 8 to 10 years time. Again, as I already said, looking at this is where AI should come into its own, along with ever developing. So we've got 2 universities, we've got Nottingham, Trent, that are both working on environmental AI models to look into this. We'll be looking to work with or have a look at all forms of platforms, proposals, and coming up with the most cost-effective way of doing this over the next year, so that we can start logging and recording these figures before they become statute anyway across every single operation that the council does. And then the pipeline project will be to decarbonise where we're sat now, and that's again the whole building, like we've done at Cotgrave. The reason for this being is it has 3 enormous boilers, and it has a combined heat and power plant, which when they were built 10 years ago were absolutely fantastic and state of the art. But the putting in the enormous solar electric system is again future proofing for when it's time to remove, decommission the gas boilers and put in either an air source or ground source heating system. So yeah, thank you very much. Really moving on and supporting our residents, businesses, and obviously all other aspects of the borough to help that become more reduce its carbon, which I'll not bore you with the details, but we are dropping by kilotons. The way the recording works is it gets published every year around about June. Don't ask me why, it just is. That's when DESNZ releases the greenhouse gas emissions for every single local authority in the United Kingdom, but it is always lagged by 2 years. So when it gets released this summer, we'll be getting it for 2004, and that's the way it has been. But the drops are that again goes back to the 90s, and the drops across the borough have been astronomical. Again, we're going to be putting in the Bridgeford and Nursery Road EV points. They're due to go in imminently. We're just waiting for the contracts to be signed on there. There's no physical money changing hands, but when that's ready, they will probably be installed within a 2 to 3 week period. We're working with some colleagues from the Affordable Warmth Solutions Innovation Funds. Now, they came from when Cadent bought the National Grid gas network. I think it was back around about 2010 time, but what they're now focusing on is they want to host an innovative infrared panel system, which is highly efficient, and they also want to run it by 6. They want 6 brand new innovative systems to run along 6 what are now classed as conventional air source heat pump systems, and they want somewhere to pay for this in a social housing area. So it would have to be in either metropolitan or somewhere like that. But they're working with our colleagues at the Nottingham Energy Partnership to hopefully find a suitable area within Rushcliffe to run this social and heating experiment. As well, due towards the end of April is the local area energy plan. This has been going on for 18 months now, and we've been doing it. It's been funded by the East Midlands Combined Council Authority, and we've been working with all businesses, the national grid, that's the national grid that takes care of our electricity grid now, Cadent, and all of the large institutions within the boroughs of Gedling, Broxtowe and ourselves at Rushcliffe to create a comprehensive energy map, which includes a 3D digital twin where you can have effectively a CAD designed Google Earth project that will tell us where energy is being used the most, wasted, where the fuel poor, where the biggest business are, and it can show you that in a 3D color coded model and can be used for bid funding in the future. So that is what is and has been going on across the boroughs. So yeah, thank you. I'd like to open the floor now for any questions. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Derek, and thank you, Ed, for your presentation. We have Councillor Barney with the question.
Fantastic, guys. Really exciting, really wonderful. There's still a lot of us that absolutely passionately believe that climate change is up there with the most significant, consequential, potentially devastating phenomena occurring in our, not just Earth, but in our universe. And really encouraging to see this little borough council actually doing some quite big stuff, you know, flexing some serious muscle in some of these areas. And from my personal politics and view, thank you very much, and thank you on behalf of my children here to have their children in years to come. So amazing. Think you know where I stand on these issues. But just on the woodland thing, and again with that hat on, trying to protect and conserve, brilliant, love it. How are we going to ensure that that woodland is there forever? We don't want it chopped down in 100 years again, particularly with LGR. Who owns that land? How are we ensuring and preserving its ownership? And also, as somebody who's planted quite a few trees in my own ward over the last 50 years, 50 next week, by the way, if anyone wants to get me a present. When we plant those trees, about 20 years ago, 25 years ago, we started to put those horrible little plastic things around them to stop the bunnies eating them. And then about 5 years after that, we leave them there, and then the trees and they've become an eyesore. We now have regular parties in Sutton Bullington to remove these, and each year we remove a few thousand. But it's laborious. It takes lots and lots of people, and it's almost impossible to do. How are we going to make sure we don't have those eyesore legacy plastic things when we're no longer in control of these woods? Thank you.
So thank you. Yeah, so we own both sites outright as the local authority area. Our senior ecologist Paul Phillips is looking at, when they're established, proposing them to be local nature reserves, which obviously will give them increased protections. They're under a grant agreement, obviously, as woodlands. Our goal is to protect them for the next 100 years, obviously, because we're looking to sequester carbon over that period. So in answer to your question, they're owned outright and they will transfer to whatever a local authority is formed. But we are working on, we would like those to be nature reserves, so which will give them added protections. As a part of some of those land deals, there's clauses in terms of if we decided to redevelop them, there's obviously uplifts for the sale of that land if we were to do it for other usages. So it's really important for us. But the grant we have are for 15 years in terms of the trees. So I've had some correspondence with lots of people in the local community around there's quite comprehensive deer netting in both sites. So in Upper Broughton and in Walswood, it's about 6'6" deer netting, which completely encloses the woodland for deer, and then there's rabbit protections on the bottom of that fence. It's to stop those animals from gnawing at the trees, so we don't have to put on those plastic guards around them. Importantly as well, the grants are covered for, so as the contractors who planted them, they will replace any ones that die in the first 3 years. So they're contracted for the first 3 years, and then we have a choice whether we continue on as a borough council with that management arrangement, or go to procurement, or manage those for the next 12 years ourselves. So we buy a commuted sum. So there's obviously a cash amount which they've equated for both of those sites that we will use. I can't categorically say in terms of there won't be some plastic guards, but I don't think they are, because obviously we're going for this deer netting, but there might be some temporary protections just for the establishment period. But we are very aware of plastic. We will as custodians of this land, it's really important that they don't have anything that's going to choke the trees or stop them from developing as they need to over the next 15 years. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Phillips.
Thank you very much. Ed, if I could just ask about the arena, so the solar panels that's going on the top. it's taken years and years, because I remember suggesting this to Councillor Moore, which was probably before your time. We're going to get them now. Will it produce enough energy to run the whole arena during the day? Or if it overproduces, does it go to battery storage? Is it going back to the grid? And I believe these panels will rotate and follow the sun to get the maximum out of them. No?
No, thanks for the question. Indeed, no, it won't run the whole of the arena. It will do on peak output around about, I would say, 50, very most 60%. The figures are very, very large in terms of the kilowatt outputs kilowatt inputs that are used to run all the air handling units and everything else. They are on a standard frame, and they are around about, I think, 450 to 500 watts each, and there's 1,038. The reason I know that is because Derek and I have been working very hard in the background on this project, but no,
I think it's important when you ask the question about the rotation. They're obviously flat. They're flat on the roof, and obviously because they're on the roof, there's no trees or shading that will be experienced. So when you think of the sun rising in the east and moving around to the west, we've got, and it's every roof. I don't think we could fit. I don't think you could swing a cat for the. I think the presentation has an aerial view of the roof space that remains available to us, and it just literally walkways around the edge. So the roof is saturated by them.
And just one sort of final question on that. Do we know how much it actually saves us in pound notes, and those monetary savings, are they being plowed back into other sort of?
Yes. So Ed, and testament to his skills at levering in money, and I think Rushcliffe, in terms of the reserve that I created, the £1 million reserve, has helped us lever in. I think we're standing on the report about £7 million that we've levered in for the money that we have spent, and the grant is 100% fully funded. We were very lucky in the fact that MCA, who's the East Midlands Combined Mayor Authority, had 2 projects. So we submitted this as a competitive exercise last May. We were told that we were unsuccessful because there was a project in Nottinghamshire and a project in Derbyshire that had been successful. In late November, those projects were deemed to not be able to be delivered within the time frame. So obviously Ed had done all this preparatory work and was able to mobilise the bid. So we've gone through a very very quick but competitive tendering exercise for 100% grant funding to provide the solar panels, which is provided by MCA and DESNZ, and it is a significant significant undertaking. The payback to get the government to get their payback is 5 years, and it is. I have the figures in terms of how much that will provide, but we get the savings from day one because obviously it's grant funding, and then we need to have a negotiation with Lex Leisure, who are our operator, because the return will be in electrical consumption. So we have to renegotiate the leisure contract. So everything we've done, so the work we've done at Cochrane Leisure Centre, there's a financial fiscal saving on that. The works we'll do at Ed Walton Golf Course, there'll be a saving on that. Gresham is internally managed, is directly managed, so the council will see that electrical saving. And here it is significant. It's around about £80,000 a year in terms of electrical consumption saving, in terms based on the current rate. That can fluctuate depending on the cost of electricity. At the moment, obviously, with the crisis that we're seeing it obviously go up, but that's what it does, and that's what it will give. And you may have seen an article when this was announced that over the life cycle, it's equivalent of about £2 million over the life cycle.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews, please.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, just like to echo Councillor Barney's sentiments. Some great work, but Councillor Fletcher's just stolen some of my thunder, which was going to be about the cost. Can you just confirm whether And I know you've said that the solar panels for here are grant funded, so that's obviously coming out of somebody else's budget, which is great for us. And we're going to have hopefully a £2 million saving over the lifetime. Presumably we're then going to have to maintain and or replace those at some point in the future. Is there anything put aside for that? And likewise with the other saving initiatives that you've quoted on, are the solar panels for the Streetwise, the golf course and Gresham Pavilion part of that same grant funding? And if not, what's the cost compared to the payback period for those? So what savings? I mean, it's great that we're doing it for the carbon saving, but what's the financial saving or the financial implications for this authority? Please, thank you. And again with the EVs, and I know you said that's a zero cost because the money's coming from somewhere else. Where is the revenue for that going? Is that coming back to us, and is there a maintenance and ongoing costing to us? Please, thank you.
So question in two parts. The value of the grant that we have for MK is £729,000. We don't think the scheme will fully cost that. That's how that is. The costs incurred in terms of obviously the income generated and obviously the renegotiation of the contract will create that saving for life cycle repair and maintenance. The solar panels have a life cycle of about 20 years. The inverters, which is the electrical component, between 10 and 15 years. So you will be looking to replace those inverters before you would look to replace those solar panels. You would look to obviously offset that cost from the savings that is generated over that life cycle. The other projects are built into the Borough Council's capital programme. So the solar panels that we're putting on Edwalton Golf Course are a part of the wider refurbishment of the golf course. So at the moment that's covered by our capital receipts, as is the Gresham Sports Park project. The Gresham Sports Park project is approximately £70,000 that we've allocated because we always do an analysis of the cost and obviously return on investment over that period. So that's included as a part of a wider programme at Gresham Sports Park, because we're looking at Legionella, and as Ed mentioned, looking at LED light and thermal insulation, how we can make that site to be as efficient as possible. Gresham Sports Park is a good example because we looked at all of the options that we had available to us, and from a financial business case perspective, it's inappropriate on that site to put in air source heat pump because we would have to store so much water, and because what makes that site energy hungry is showers. So because it's very popular in the evening and at the weekends, the flood lighting on it are low energy LEDs anyway. So what we're trying to do is the solar panels will look to offset that as well. There is a financial calculation, I just don't have it to hand. And then the final question, in terms of Bridgeford Park, we're not doing it for commercial gain, that project. As you'll know, West Bridgeford and Rushcliffe, as Ed has alluded to, is very well served. We were very fortunate to get some grants as a part of the rollout of EV. So in terms of our car parks, we weren't able to get that into West Bridgeford because of power supply issues. There's not enough power to go around. So Quello, who are a commercial operator, have a business decision that they will put in the infrastructure, and they will then benefit. Obviously, they get a return on that investment from the people who use those spaces. The people that use those spaces, so there will be 12, I think, in the Bridgeford Road car park, and then 4 in the nursery car park. They still have to issue a ticket, so it's still a parking bay, but they would be paying for that electricity from Quello. They have a margin. Obviously, they've got their costs for the supply of electricity, and then they get their return. The project has been complicated because of the lack of power and where they're drawing the power from in central West Bridgeford, because we know that power supply is an issue. So they're taking that power from There's a substation upgrade which you'll have seen in the Marks and Spencer Nursery Road car park, and then they will horizontally drill to provide power to. What really pleasing about that is with the removal of the recycling bins in the corner of Fitcher Park, you'll know the recycling bins, that's where they're going to go. So we're going to have additional car parking spaces, which is going to meet the need, and it's going to be great for those people going to cafes and restaurants in the town centre as well. So it's more of a social value than a commercial return.
Brilliant, thank you. I was just after some reassurance that it wasn't going to be costing more than we're saving in terms of the solar, and I get that as part of our carbon saving, we've outsourced that EV. So that's the assurance I wanted. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Grocott.
Thanks, Chair. Great report. Really enjoy that, guys. Thank you. Really thorough, and I absolutely concur with the sentiments expressed that fully support what we're doing here. I think it's fantastic. I'm picking up on what's already been discussed though, and there's the theme emerging, and I don't want you to give me a number of anecdotal responses, because I think what would have been really useful though is we know that the principles of what you're trying to achieve are under attack potentially, and so the goal of offsetting carbon on its own, while laudable and fully supported, I think, by most members here, needs to be complemented with something you touched on at the end there, Derek, social value and economic value. So what would be really useful to see would be financial savings to the borough. And again, it doesn't have to be like to the pound or the penny, estimates are fine, but a table with financial savings to the borough, economic benefits to the borough. And, you know, that means we're bringing in economic growth colleagues. I know these are big capital programs and they like to talk about the economic benefits to local businesses, local people, etc. Be really useful to see summary table of financial benefits to the the council itself, relative of costs, of course. But what's that investment done if we are shelling out, and we are ourselves, or we're bringing money in from MCO and other agencies? How's that benefiting businesses, communities, people in the borough as well? So you talked about some of the social benefits, the increased amenity that we're getting from more parking spaces, etc. Then there's the financial benefits to local businesses. So I think it would be useful to kind of join that up and have some sort of report in that. I don't know if we can, how we take that as a recommendation or something to add to the recommendation going forward. Because I know that was both your questions were about financial benefits. I'm again thinking that broader social value and economic value benefit to the borough that would be useful to see. I just wanted to touch on one other point as well, related to the woodland. Obviously, I've remembered the name of the report, and it was cited in the press release, but we discussed it in growth and development, not here, was the Adaptive Investment for Growth Environment Agency report of July 2023. Finally remember what it was called, Liz. Really trips off the tongue, doesn't it? Rushcliffe scored not top, third of the boroughs for environmental equality, the district council areas, but in particular highlighted out of the 326 district areas, is it 326? Yeah, we've scored we were finished 295 for plants and wildlife. Obviously, the creation of new woodland and nature reserves, as you've outlined, under Paul's expertise, will have a positive impact on that. I'd like to see that captured as well. What's that nature benefit going to be? And very much highlighting to the Environment Agency producing these reports that put us so low for plants and wildlife. And I do know a bit about why we scored like that we're actually taking action and doing stuff about it. And you know, you've started that. That was part of the publicity that was shared. I know you didn't mention it today in your presentation, but it's definitely got to be a huge benefit as well, not just in terms of offsetting carbon, but to nature itself, plants and wildlife and biodiversity in the borough.
Yeah, absolutely. The reason I obviously didn't go in, because we've obviously produced the Rushcliffe Nature Recovery Strategy, which feeds into the Nottinghamshire Nature Recovery Strategy, and those two things are kind of in lockstep with each other. Obviously, the purposes of this was to focus on those carbon and sequestration elements, but you know, there's really exciting. So part of this woodland is going to be wildflower meadows for a section of Rushcliffe Woods. We're creating walls wood is quite wet, the land is quite poor quality. So we're creating lake, which will obviously create habitats and that is as well. So Paul, in terms of the work, he really is translating that, and obviously we're going to benefit from 106 acres of additional woodland in the immediate term, and it's really important that we do that. One of the reasons that we've scored so low is because obviously we've got lots of productive agricultural land, and the land that's not overwashed by the green belt, that's productive agricultural land, is being developed, and obviously in terms of industry and all of that, and we don't have the same coverage as we have in other areas of Nottinghamshire, so like Sherwood Forest and the extensive areas of Newark and Sherwood. Exactly, yeah, it's in terms of scale, but the work we're doing is really contributing to that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in terms of the point made by Councillor Grocott, he's asked for the financial benefits and the economic benefits, and I was wondering whether after the meeting, is it possible to circulate some kind of table in terms of the savings, or could we take it as a recommendation forward?
Yeah, I would suggest that the savings one might be a little bit easier. Calculating a direct economic benefits one is going to be a little bit harder, and it's going to require probably some support from economic growth and social value. It might be a project for next year. We get this report in a year, and that's work that's been covered in the next year, if the portfolio holders and councillors agree, of course. But I think it would be worthwhile. Sorry, Darren.
Yeah, what I was going to suggest, obviously, this is an annual report, so we will be bringing an annual report back in. I don't actually know if it's on the work programme, but normally we would come back in April 2027 to discuss again. So I think what you're basically asking is, could we have some sort of outcomes type table at the end of the report, just to show those benefits in all the areas you mentioned? I don't think that'd be a problem to be included certainly in the next one.
Yeah, it's the intangible benefits as well. Yes, we can have. So each project we do has a business case. So obviously there's the is this going to make us additional money? For example, Ed touched upon the significant drop this year has been on HVO, or transition from diesel to HVO, which is 95% less emitting. That costs more than diesel. So obviously there's not a financial saving for that, it's actually costing us more. But so each one of those business cases is built on its own merit. What we can actually do is we'll work on that, and then we'll look at the ancillary benefits in terms of providing those facilities as well.
Thank you. Is that okay? Yeah, thank you. Councillor Mason.
Well, I've listened to a few, and most of my questions were sort of around that area. But I would just like to say that there has been so much work on this. We can all hear how much time has been given, and well done to all of you for getting through it. I think that must have been a challenge as well. But one of the risks on this report is local government reorganisation. And I think you've probably got a lot more work to do in the 2 years, if it goes ahead, in the 2 years before then, and everything finally happening. And I too think it is a risk factor about future projects, but also the ones that we're talking about now. I would like to think that they will all go on in the same way, and I think we've all got our fingers crossed on that. I know there will be other pressures on this area if and when it happens. But will we be looking at different avenues to try and ensure that what we are talking about now is still deliverable in 2030? And I don't know. I mean, it's a huge subject, the reorganisation. But I would like to think that we are already thinking of some way of keeping our woodlands, our animals, plants and everything else viable, and everything's still working on that. So it's the only question really that I've got left, is what do you think you will need to do to try and keep all this going through that time?
Yeah, so so each local authority across Nottinghamshire and the two unitary authorities have set carbon. They've all set their own individual climate commitments. As LGR is impacted us in 2028 and become a new entity, obviously the political dynamic of that will set what those targets are. Our ED's work and our work continues to be laser focused on trying to achieve as much as we can by 2030 or in advance of that, in terms of our woodlands, and that they're protected. They've obviously got all their own protections in those areas, but obviously that will obviously, whatever the new authority becomes, they will either novate those existing targets for each of those local authorities. So Broxtowe is 2027, Nottingham City is 2028, the majority of the other local authorities are 2030. As a borough-wide area, whatever that local authority area will look like after LGR, our 2050 target as a borough-wide area to be carbon neutral is a legally binding target. So unless the government decides to change the law, then that is a legally binding international target, which we've passed in legislation. So as we work to that 2050 target, I think what we're seeing, obviously, we have lots of stuff going on in the world at the moment, and those pressures really highlight the need for alternative fuels and sources and this work. So it will develop over time. I can't say what LGR will look like, but I can say that there's commitments that each one of those authorities have made. It'll be up for whatever that new administration is to reset that target. But the work that we will do will significantly contribute to whatever that new entity is. For the Rushcliffe geography as it currently is, been carbon neutral by 2030, because we're really close. We're really close to achieving with the work that Ed's done, and the amount of grant funding that he's levered in to support his work is really laudable in terms of what we're doing.
Can I just ask something else
Yes.
as well? Thank you. Yes. What we've been good at, though, in the past and even now, is for you that you go out and look for money and are the expertise that's there on doing that, I hope will stay within this area, because I go to different scrutiny groups, and I remember, and some of you will, Colin Bullitt, and if you needed any money, somehow he would squirrel away, and he had money squirreled away somewhere, or he knew exactly where to go, and it would pop up, which sounds a bit simple, but it seemed like that. And I do hope that stays with us in this area, even if it's not the whole of Rushcliffe, but it stays in this area. Thank you.
No, thank you very much for that. I mean, at the end of the day, the way it's viewed in terms of delivery is fuel poor homes, energy inefficient business, energy efficient buildings. They're not going to move with the boundaries, and I like to think I'm not going to move, and colleagues are not going to move. And it's a case of, as long as there is, I'm not trying to sound twee, but as long as there are the properties that need the net zero interventions doing, then carry on, because it needs doing. Now that may get rebranded as future proofing, resilience, fuel poverty, moving away from the carbon side of things, but there's ways of looking at it in terms of impacts on health saving, impacts on access to amenities. And absolutely, so no, that's a very well noted question. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. come to Councillor Plant, then Councillor Billen, and then back to Councillor Barney.
Okay, yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you both of you. It's a really well written report and a very interesting presentation. And obviously a lot of hard work has gone on over the years. And we're well on target in terms of the Rushcliffe estate, and it's we will reach the target by what is it? Only 4 years away. So yeah, but obviously then it's the sort of wider borough target that was mentioned, obviously in the presentation. And again, I think you said 40% of housing are certainly in need of decarbonisation or insulation, etc. Actually, I thought it was more than that, but it's still a pretty high percentage. But what was mentioned was the home energy advice team. And actually, I hadn't heard about that. And it obviously does play a role. I'm just wondering how that is actually publicised and what sort of take up and how that works in general, because that really needs one mammoth push across the borough. The other thing I was going to say is that in terms of all the negative publicity, both in this country and obviously abroad about climate change, etc., I'm really, really pleased in terms of what was written in our report on the risks that is actually mentioned. This is happening. It's not going away because certain people are saying it's going to go away, and we must really keep up the work, and well done everybody for doing it and stating it and putting it in that report out for the general public. Thank you.
Again, thank you for the question. It's very, very interesting actually, because yes, it does need to be publicised. However, and my colleague Ed does help with us on that. We work through the local authority energy partnership, which covers all of the Derbyshire, Nottinghamshire side. We do social media platforms, energy agencies, and things like that. But actually saying that, we find that we don't need to really publicise this service in terms of informing people what to do. Most of the communities around Rushcliffe, and I believe the same for my colleagues within the neighbouring authorities, we don't need to send this message. It's about how you go through the process and how, and this is where obviously the way the funding streams are looking to change over the next 2 years. You're absolutely right. It's 40% of our carbon comes from housing, but around about 98% of the housing stock that needs doing has to be paid for through the able to pay market. And it's developing the networks. And I'm attending meetings at least once a week at the moment with Nottinghamshire colleagues and Derbyshire Nottinghamshire colleagues on how can we be geared up, ready to encourage people to part fund and then take on some form of, it could be an ethical loan, it could be a zero interest return on investment, like the old, I'm going way back now with the Green Deal. And it's giving the people the confidence and the way forward for them to be confident to invest an amount of their income, because to do a deep retrofit could be 50 to 100,000, and then can they have the confidence in some form of finance towards this? And that is, when that is resolved, it will be a very, very good journey, and it will really help the, well, I think other than transport, one of the largest carbon emitters across the country, which is our homes. Yeah.
Just it's the same in terms of getting that message of the social and economic value of obviously doing your own individual house, in so much as it is in terms of the comments made by Councillor Grocott and Councillor Matthews, that you want, together with all the what we've had in the presentation, we need to get that message over that there's savings to be made. Also, perhaps that this money could be used for other things. That it really needs to go hand in glove with what it is we're doing now. It's the same in your own individual house.
No, absolutely. And when it comes to the when you get your retrofit assessment, that will give you that information. So it doesn't just say you're going to save this carbon. It will give you a financial estimate on whichever technology is given. So whether it's a deep retrofit with a zero carbon heating system, that information is provided as part of that.
Just on that, in terms of the work that Ed is doing, in terms of leaving in those grants, the £1.2 million that's quoted, and those are the people that are that's means tested in terms of combined family income. So we're our strategy at the moment for the grant funding that's available to us is we're seeking out those worst performing properties on people that are struggling, obviously, to pay those bills, and that's the work that Ed's doing with our colleagues across the area to find those properties and make those most fuel-proof, poor properties having those grant funding. So it's really important work that we're doing, and it really makes a difference to those people's lives. In terms of, there's a non-traditional housing form in East Leak, which a lot of that work is concentrated in, because they're the leakiest homes that are. So they're former. That's, yeah, exactly. Non-traditional build type homes, but they're very, very cold. So the best thing to do is completely insulate the entire building, and that's what Ed has been working on really diligently over the last time, because it is retrofitting existing houses is the challenge. The new stock, there's obviously, we've got design codes and planning and guidance for new homes to build, and they are more energy efficient. It's all of the older houses and what we can do within our powers to be able to support those.
Thank you. Councillor Bill.
I had quite a few questions, and you've answered them all every time someone's gone around. And I was actually writing down as you were speaking, Edward, about Rushden Borough Council becoming an enabler to assist residents to actually perform their own retrofits, etc. But primarily about, you know, how to do it, where to get the money from. And as I was writing that, you were answering the question anyway, so that's brilliant. I'd like to echo what everyone else has said, and thank you very much for the report and for all of the actual hard work behind it. I know the report is detailed, but I know there's an awful lot more that goes into it than that. And I would actually like to remind Ed, Eddie Owen, if I can never get his surname probably because it's the same as Ed Owen. The very first question I asked you 3 years ago was, when are we going to put more solar panels on the roof? So I'm absolutely thrilled that it's going to happen. Because I remember then you actually said, yeah, to answer the question that was asked over there about how much electricity will be generated, you actually said back then, even if we crammed a solar panel on every square inch of the roof, we still would not have enough. So my supplementary to that is, as the next phase, we'll start looking at solar on car parks, because there's a dual benefit in that, in that it generates electricity, it also reduces the heat on the cars, which preserves the cars. It then means that people are not running their air conditioning in the cars, which means they're not using so much fuel. And it keeps it off farmland. And it keeps it off of farmland. Yes, because I'd rather have them on roofs and car parks before we touch the green spaces. Second part of the question, scope 3 monitoring. The very first thing I wrote down in here was about HVO, because obviously we're using something that at the point of use has reduced the CO2 emissions. What do we know about the supply chain of what emissions and carbon is, you know, embedded in that to get that fuel to the trucks? Is it overall better than diesel?
Yes. No. So I'll go in reverse. So with the HVO, the where it's procured from, we have a certificate that it has only come from waste oil, and that's from, I do believe that's within the UK. I can double check that. That's not an issue. But I draw the greenhouse gas conversion factor from the government statistics, says it's 90% as opposed to 98, because it factors in the processing, the fossil fuel, ironically enough, the possibly diesel used to truck it to the plant, and that is why it cannot be classed as anything more than 90%. The methodology has been crunched by the scientists and statisticians in central government, and that's the figure the figure for it. So that's going to answer it for me. And then the regarding solar canopies, it is a possibility, but the big issue you have with Rushcliffe Arena is at the moment I really wouldn't recommend drilling into the ground and fastening it into the ground due to the history of what the site's developed on. It is something we are definitely keeping an eye on, because I did a cost benefit analysis on the system that was used with our colleagues at the British Geological Survey, and they regretfully used a traditional steel panel frame that covered over the not the entirety of the car park but the main parking base, and did exactly what you said at shading, and delivered a reasonable amount of generation, but the cost of install would take around about 80 years to pay off. Not to dismiss the idea, but I think when technologies come available, such as the roof mounting, fastening kits and things like that for flat roofs, if there is something that can be accepted by building control that's secure and does not involve drilling into the ground to a depth that might interfere with the membrane below this building, it is something we can definitely continually monitor. And again, if there can be a procured system that has a reasonable return on investment that follows the golden rule period, which as long as it's within a 10-year period, then it is something that we'll definitely continue reviewing and looking into. Yeah.
Thank you. And the last one for Councillor Byrne, please.
Yeah, sorry, I'm being very indulgent. So Councillor Thomas and I were privileged to attend something called Have We Got the Energy, I believe. It was put on by East Midlands Council about 3 weeks ago. And so there were lots of councillors there from all East Midlands councils, but there was a whole morning on all different energy issues. It was incredible, actually. It was really informative. One of the sessions was on something which I think was local energy plans or something like that, but basically like the Greater Nottingham Strategic Plan, central government wanting to introduce local area plans for energy supply, thinking of data centres, thinking of where we're going to put solar farms, so on and so forth, and just that energy management. Is it on Rushcliffe's radar?
Thank you. Yes, that's the local area energy plan. That's the digital twin, and the report that's due to be published at the end of this month. So I actually had the training on how to use it. So the data sets overlay everything, that because it was Michael Gallagher, because I was there. It was at the university, wasn't it, last week? And yeah, Michael Gallagher was saying that the first one was in Derby, but Rushcliffe, Broxtone, Gedling are the cohort 2. It has been completed. The drafts have been done, and yet that information is due end of April.
And that's the reason it's done at a spatial level. That's why MK and Mayor Claire Ward is leading on that piece of work, because we're looking at, because obviously it's major infrastructure, we're looking at a wider than a local authority area, so it's on a larger spatial scale.
And I don't want to prolong it, but I think also that it was indicated that it would also have it would go down to parishes and local areas as well to feed into that, just like we did with the strategic plan, which I thought would probably be quite sensible.
The absolute final one, Councillor Billion, and then we're going to go to the recommendations.
It's more of a little mini recommendation actually, because of reporting times. Can I suggest that next year this comes to the July meeting to give you time to pull in all of the end of April, May data, rather than going, well, I can't answer that because it's next month. Okay. If it's next month, let's do it the month after. Let's do it in July.
It's a good recommendation. So we've had 2 recommendations, one about this agenda item to be presented for July 2027, and the other one about having a table of financial benefits, economic benefits when you're doing the report for next year. So if everybody's happy, we've had a good debate today. Is everybody happy to proceed ahead with the recommendations? Show of hands, please. Brilliant. Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Ed. We've been very patient. Report was very thorough. Presentation was great. Thank you both. So the next The next item on the agenda is the West Bridgeford Contact Plan, and I'll be inviting Ed Palmer to do his presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. First of all, thank you for those who were able to attend the site on Monday down at the library, or for those of you who didn't, I hope you can get a flavour now from the report and the few slides we've got this evening as to where we're at the library. Just like to start off, first of all, Emma, if it's okay with our next one, if that's all right. So this is the background to the move. Hopefully this mirrored in what you see in the report. The context and the background to this is that we, as an organisation, moved to Fountain Court in 2020, in fact a few weeks before the pandemic began. And before that you were seeing approximately, in the years before that, maybe 10,000 visits per year to our customer service sites in West Bridgeford. Obviously COVID has transformed everything, as you would imagine, and we've gone from that 10,000 figure in 2018 through to around about in the 2023 figure was 3,780. So a very, very different picture. And therefore, with all of this going on and the whole transition of how the world was changing, our customer access strategy looked at ensuring that we got a good eye on our customer service sites, including the leases and service level agreements with the partners we got in place. And so for the four that we've got there, I know the library was there before. Fountain Court was obviously a private rental, but Bingham Medical Centre, we've been there for over a decade. The new Copgrave Hub that opened in circa 2018, again, we've been there since that switched to there. And then Eastleigh Library, very good partnerships with Inspire in the libraries and good working relations with the NHS, and the site obviously over at Copgrave Hub we actually own, but work alongside again Inspire. So very much we were looking at what we could be doing as a council to ensure that these sites were fit for purpose, were doing what they needed to do, but absolutely meeting customer need. So amongst the backgrounds and what was happening to assess these sites was ensuring then that if there were opportunities and better opportunities in other buildings, were they still easily accessible? Were they located nearby public transport? Did they have good car parking? And did they have the appropriate facilities to address the range of customers' needs? And Cabinet looked at this in early 2024 and decided later on that year that the West Bridgeford Library option, in conjunction with Inspire, offering us a space there, could help to boost the town centre offer, because obviously it would free up that space in the unit that we're in at Fountain Court, and then leverage some financial savings and everybody benefit from a shared service space. And I hope the report looks at that in terms of that it's had a good opportunity for both parties, both Inspire and RBC, getting that extra footfall and it leaning off one another. And that's partly been showcased as well in the fact that we've had a slight increase since we moved from Fountain Court to the library. These are then just the comparisons again that we've taken out of the report in terms of opening times between the two. So at the moment then, so Fountain Court, I think it was just the other way around, the switch, we actually started at 8:30. We're now 9 o'clock at the library. That was just in line with the then opening hours. So there has been very, very minimal change in terms of what you've actually got in terms of a customer service offer at both sites. We continue to review what we do. We will look to open earlier, 8:30 a.m. if need be going forward, but we actually find there isn't the demand for that currently. We're getting very, very few numbers who actually approach the desk in the library at that time, but we'll always be open to it. The Mondays, Thursdays and Fridays there is that, again, it's in line with what historically we've found are the busiest times of the week. So the 3 days that we've negotiated with Inspire to be there, we found that, but that is flexible, I'm sure. It hasn't got to be absolutely rigid across those days, but we're finding the vast majority of customers can find us on those days. Okay. The annual rent, of course, as the report says, this exercise wasn't just about a money saving option. It was looking at what is the best landmark and best building for this service to be in, and we can't say that the where the library is closer, even next to one of the biggest, largest car park in the town as well, has really had a good benefit. So again, it was with that view in mind of saying what is actually ever more accessible. When you say to the library, does that mean a lot more to local people than we've got a customer service centre on Gordon Road at Fountain Court? Again, that was part of the thinking, to make sure that people could find us. And I think it bore true that I think that I can say anecdotally, there was only 2 people who, after the move, went to Fountain Court instead of the library. Very, very low numbers. So we hope we got it right from that point of view. The figures then, as I said before, we actually saw between the last 12 months at Fountain Court and the first 12 months at the library, a slight increase, roughly sort of 300 or so extra visits in that time. This is just to put into context then where we are with face-to-face and where we've had this massive shift. Obviously, post-COVID, these figures would have looked different had we gone back to even 2020. We, in this time period, then had 6,040 visits to all of our contact points. And by comparison, then, in that time we took nearly 90,000 calls, approaching 37,000 emails and over 13,000 web form inquiries. So I hope that puts it in context that the methods of contact here, how much face-to-face is very small, but it's still, we know, absolutely vital. So as much as we know we've got an ever more, hopefully, engaged, educated audience out there, and our residents are able to use it through our other means, we know face-to-face is really, really still so important. There's an element of the community that need to have that for whatever reason, that they're not digitally engaged, that they don't want to particularly have a phone conversation about it. They find it easier to talk to a person face-to-face, and that's why we know we've got the provision there, and we've kept that offer completely the way post-COVID, so that I think it reflects it even to 10 years ago, that we've got the same customer offer, compared with then the difference would be in West Bridgford, it used to be 5 days, it's now 3. But again, that is in line with that demand having shifted so much. This was just an example of it as well. I know this is very, very similar, but just to highlight again, there's not been a change in the real typical service inquiries that we get at the centre. This reflects, as well as you might imagine, on most other methods of contact as well. So council tax, waste, garden waste bin service is always going to be up there in terms of the top inquiries that we get. Sometimes it can obviously fluctuate month to month in terms of we get housing inquiries or benefits inquiries, or through to environmental health, things can pitch around. But there you're looking at the real core of what people come and see us about. I know one thing that was obviously raised, and has been raised before, was a question when we decided to make the move to the library, was about private conversations. We understand and looked at the contact point offers elsewhere, Eastleigh, Bingham and Cotgrave over time, about private conversations and wanting to have that privacy if need be. We found post-COVID there was a real switch where, again, so many more inquiries that required a degree of privacy were being done in different means. People were contacting us digitally or over the phone, that meant that could be private. So when we were looking at what we did at the library, we were aware then that, going back to Fountain Court first, in the 12 months before the movement made, there was 7 housing appointments made as private appointments, and then there were 4 requests for private conversations. That's gone south again since we've gone to the library. We've had the 2 requests for private conversations, and we've been able to utilise a meeting room on the ground floor on both occasions that's been requested. We know as well that in terms of if they're not free for whatever reason, you can make it a same day appointment to come and see somebody here at the arena. Appreciate that might not be the most convenient option as well, to come here and do that if they want to, but certainly it's possibly shown by the demand in the 18 months or so we've been at the library that nobody's actually requested that so far. We've been able to meet the demand, but times are changing. We're not to say that that won't change itself. I just put this in really as an example then of the locations on the map do not refer back to the exact places where the face-to-face offer is available around the county, but this was just to get a flavour of I know colleagues across the county are working under great restricted resources compared with years gone past, and that's reflected really in terms of customer service offer other councils, I should say. And you get a great difference of where some councils have massively engaged really, really well with their digital offer, with other offers, and are still doing very, very well, even if they've only got a single customer service outlet available for somebody to go and see them face to face. but I can't emphasise enough how much I think we're quite proud of the fact that we've got the offer that we've got of years gone past, and that we can still see people once a week. I appreciate at Bingham, Eastleigh and Cotgrave it is only a day a week or half a day a week in line with the demand, but I hope that gives you an example then of around the county. Others have needed to have looked at their customer service offer quite a lot more diligently and really had to cut their cloth accordingly, and therefore sadly some of their customer service office has had to go, and or in a very positive way they've again not needed to have it as much. They've not needed those extra sites because people have been so adaptable and been able to work with the good offer of digital and other means that have been offered. But I just thought I'd put that in there as the comparison, and I think that's pretty questions.
Thank you, Ed. Okay. So Councillor Phillips first.
Thanks for that, and thanks for showing us around on Monday at the library. Just picking up on a couple of points. Pre-COVID, Fountain Court was seeing about 10,000. If we got to that situation again, could the library cope with 10,000 visits, or would it be a case of opening from 3 days to 5 days? And if the library can cope with 10,000, did we miss an opportunity when we moved into Fountain Court? Could we have gone into the library, or was there some restrictions then that prevented us from doing that?
Just to clarify, sorry if it wasn't clear, so 2018 was 10,000. When we moved in 2020, it had reduced, but that was literally in the few weeks before the first lockdown. If we were at 3,000-ish, I would say that they'd estimate between at least 6,000 to 8,000 people would have gone had a lockdown not happened and those habits changed. But you're right. No, I think the understanding was that there'd been such that shift during that time. That's why we look for a similar offer. So you've got exactly the same number of desks, so 3 people can see somebody face to face at Fountain Court as they can at the library. We thought it would be more about reviewing, well, is that actually this is going to spike demand? Do we actually need more than the 3 days? So all we can say is we'll keep it fluid and open and honest. I mean, given all the factors going on, globally, and the price of energy and the price of fuel, etc., there's a knock-on effect to that. Some people might need a lot more help in the future years because of the cost of living is where it's at and continues to be. There's many ways the service could evolve, so it's really about keeping it flexible, and we've got such a good partner in Inspire who are being, I'm sure, willing to work with that. In terms of the other part as well, I mean, I know historically when we left at the police station in 2020, there was a desire to look at other places. I think we looked at the library, and at that time it wasn't going to work for them. So that's the reason that this move didn't take place, obviously, beforehand as well. That's the same as any partner at any given time. It can work. They might have had plans for parts of the building that they got. I'm sure, pre-COVID was a different world for them as well. So it's really good that we've come round to it, and that it's been a positive first 18 months so far.
And just one final question, I guess with LGR coming down the road, there might be a big need for more questions, more face to face. And as long as we've got that spare capacity at the library, that would be really helpful.
Again, I can only emphasise that Inspire would, if there's an opportunity to work with that building and look and explore the spaces, if there's more demand, absolutely. LGR, we'll see where we are, won't we, in later this year. I can only say that we're in good contact with our fellow local authorities. We work well together, and I'd hope that will continue whatever shape LGR takes.
Thank you. Councillor Barney.
Yeah, thank you. Like Councillor Phillips, Councillor Butler, I was thrilled to attend on Monday. It was a real eye-opener. I've never been in that particular building before. I've been to Cotgrave and Eastleigh many times, but what an incredible building that was. And I was inspired, once again, inspired is the right word, with Inspire having its own presence in that building, just to believe in the value of libraries. We keep great county, great Rushcliffe, great sport, all that's of Great Britain. One of the things that I was reminded of is just the importance of these community spaces and buildings. So the visit happened on Monday. It's Easter holidays, bearing in mind. It's 10 o'clock in the morning, and the place was buzzing. I reckon there were 40, maybe 50 people in there, all different age groups, you know, every social group being represented. People on their laptops, there were students in there working, there were older people getting books exchanged, there was grandmothers with grandchildren, there were groups of toddler children right at the back. At one point there was a queue for the gents. I was shocked, and I was actually left quite concerned that, you know, that actually, as a huge believer in LGR, where is it actually going to leave us if Rushcliffe's fortunate to have these services and provisions? And that's before you get to the customer service desk, which was remarkable. So a flurry of traffic there as well. The staff very well time served. There's a gentleman there who was behind the desk there, worked for many years. What he doesn't know about Rushcliffe, nobody does. And then the lady, I'd say her name, but I don't know whether this meeting's been recorded, so I won't. Phenomenal. She's been with us for 4 years in customer service, and just fielding a whole host of inquiries. People at the most difficult and tragic times of need, you know, dealing with bereavement, dealing with family members in crisis. Found it incredible. So it was a real eye-opener to me, and I'm sorry that I am cut off from obviously what is so important to so many people all the time, but really crucial that's kept with LGR. And I was also stretched by some of the back systems that are operating and supporting this. So while our customer service representatives are on the front desk, they're also fielding calls continually, so nobody's wasting any time. It's quite remarkable. But the switchboard and the control software and the operation systems that lie behind that, of course, are unique to Rushcliffe. So I was concerned, one, that we're going to lose all this because of LGR. But secondly, if we are able to sustain it, what work's being done to make sure that there's continuity of services within your authority? So I guess all run on different bases, and I know that lots of the other authorities don't have the same provision. Sorry, I was around there, but I was inspired.
No, I appreciate the sentiment, absolutely, and yeah, thank you. I mean, the staff are, we'd like to think, very happy most of the time. It's certainly not, it's a challenging role they do. The volume and breadth of information that they need to know is exceptional, and I can only say we've got a lot of experience in the team, and they really do deliver day after day after day after day, and it's to have the resilience they have for the level of calls they have is exceptional. But so thank you. But going on in terms of LGR, all I would say is in terms of that we're hopefully in as good a place as possible to put over a really strong case as to why these customer service sites can remain. In the main, they are very low cost in the grand scheme of things. They're also flexible. So I really hope that, again, that to the right forum at the right time, it can be made that can be part of any customer offer going forward. Again, probably the other fly in the ointment around that is our friend of AI. We know how much that council services per se are possibly going to change in line with that, and what becomes the norm and accepted practice in the sector as to how services will be run. But rest assured, I think that the fact that we've actually seen in the 18 months that we've had here that slight increase in face-to-face service, maybe that's because we're getting more footfall and we've made the right choice of the location we've gone to. But I hope it means that it gives a really strong message that face-to-face offer is really valued, and if it can remain as part of whatever unitary system we go under soon, it will be valued by a lot of people.
Thank you. Councillor Billen.
You partly answered my question, and so was Councillor Barney. Actually, I wasn't able to get there on Monday, so I was going to ask the question of the members of staff that you field the questions that's face to face. What do they do when there isn't anybody face to face? But obviously, you just said on the telephone. Are they the same staff that then go out to Cotgrave, Eastleigh, and is that why it's only on one day a week, because those staff are moving around all week?
It flexes. We've got various staff who work at all sites. It depends in cases even their geographical location. Some work in parts of the borough because it's nearly on their doorstep. They don't live there, hasten to add. But they're just even their local knowledge on certain topics is really handy to have. They're actually a member of the community. So again, they can pick up on certain things, signpost ever quicker. But no, it varies. We have various people in terms of whether they work here at Rushcliffe Arena, answering phones. It can be at any one of the contact points. But we try, if it works for those members of staff and they enjoy doing it, if they want to work in their own local community, because they've got that little bit more local knowledge, it can only be a good thing and help people.
Thank you. Councillor Butler.
Yes, I haven't really got any questions. It's observations more than anything from the visit the other day. As you picked up on, the first impression you get when you walk in, it's very welcoming. And what you have to remember is that it's rather like people contacting us as councillors. They only need to come along when something's gone wrong or there's a crisis. And I think the general ambience of being in a library, which is sort of nice place to be, as opposed to going to a traditional council office, which could be a little bit intimidating, is a real plus point. As colleagues have said, we had quite long conversations with the staff when we could, because they were all sort of busy on the phone or dealing with people coming in. But we did have a good conversation with them, and there's no doubt about it. The staff are very positive about being in the library. There's just no doubt about it. I think as well, another advantage from the public's point of view of being in there as opposed to Fountain Court or here or wherever is it's far more accessible. It's literally, I mean, lots of buses literally stop outside the library from all over the borough, and as we said as well, it's next to the car park. So and it's just right, and it works. And then obviously, as it says in the report as well, £50,000 a year saving is substantial, isn't it? And at the end of the day, we're saving that, but I think that we are providing a genuinely very good service to our residents. But we asked so many questions on Monday and we got so many answers. It's rather difficult to think of anything else to pick up on. But I did welcome the opportunity to go along. And certainly apologies for my tardy lateness. I got held up in a residence situation.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. At least you made it in the morning. Yeah. I was supposed to go in the morning and I couldn't because I had an ant infestation in my house. So I did actually go in the afternoon, and it was a bit more quieter, and I had the opportunity to meet all the staff members who were at the contact point, and a lovely lady called Alison. And I was struck by when I was asking her questions about when people come in and there are issues such as domestic violence, which are quite sensitive, how do them as a customer services point handle that? And she was clear that they would first ask the customer what the issue is immediately. If there's something sensitive, then they will go into a private room. There has been no issues about liaising with the library in terms of the private room, and she kind of walked through the whole process. What happens if a customer really was not comfortable talking there and wanted to have some privacy? And one of the things that she did mention is the staff were worried about LGR, because they did say that this is such a vital service and the footfall has increased since moving to the library because of parking, because of public transport. So something that they asked me to feedback is how we as a council and we as a committee could recommend for this service to continue even after LGR.
Thank you both. I appreciate you having visited. I think we've touched on the LGR point in terms of, I hope that again we've got that very strong message to put across in where partners we join in the Unitary Authority. All I can say as well is in terms of it, I really appreciate the feedback as well. All I hope is that we don't stand still and we just ever more so listen and are reactive to what customers want. As I said earlier, in terms of we've just got such an onus on things financially for lots and lots of people. It's supposed to be a case of how can we be ever more convenient. So I think Councillor Phillips' first point about days of the week, how many times we were there, we're not seeing the demand at the moment that would make that change. But that's not to say that we wouldn't be sitting here in 12 months' time and things might change. So it's just not about resting on our laurels really, and knowing that things can change a bit.
That's the plan.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I couldn't make it on Monday, but I am regularly in the library as it's obviously in my ward. And also I was in attendance at the Town and Parish Forum, which was last week, wasn't it? Yeah. And it was really interesting to have, there was staff from the customer services who had the opportunity to talk about their work. And I was really impressed by their sensitivity, by their approach, by their experience, really. However, I still do have concerns about the privacy element of the library because, as Councillor Barney has said, often it is extremely busy, and there are 2 rooms that are often rented out that are available. But other than that, it is quite difficult to actually find space where you can have that conversation. I felt better when I sort of after at the town and parish forum listening to the staff, because I thought they have the ability to deal with that sensitively. But again, if there was a rush and a lot of people coming at the same time, I mean, this is going to be an issue for even where they could wait. So I do still have concerns about where it is. There's no doubt about it. What was also came out at the town and parish forum was, and I'm not going to mention any areas here, there was a group of councillors who do have a contact centre. That's not the West Bridgeford one, it was him, who said, and they were on the table next to me, I didn't know we had one in our whatever, and it was a complete surprise to them. So I thought that was a bit worrying. And again, in terms of the numbers using contact centres, how are they publicised? So those are my comments. Thank you.
Just so first of all, just to answer the question about busyness, I take it obviously a busy library. We talked about the footfall earlier. We've got 2 waiting seats. It was one of the big things that we talked about when we were looking at our property team. What do we want to do? What is there actually space for? It's very rare that we have a queue of longer than 3. I can't recall ever seeing a time where there's been more than 3 customers waiting, and more routinely it's 1 at a time. So I hope that we've got the offer right for the demand that's coming in. I'll put a big asterisk next to that and say things could change. So again, we'd look at that with Inspire over time, that if you get a different demand in the services change, that we'd look at what we do. It could even be that we look at other areas of the library that we extend to, that we have as a different offer somewhere else that we have. We'll keep that open as a possibility. But I think what we found, and I understand the concern about a private conversation, is that we've had the 2 instances in the 18 months where somebody's requested a private conversation. If we got a lot more, I think we'd be looking at things differently to go, right, where do we really need to? And again, I'm happy that could change. And we understand that we need to have that flexibility. So it could be, for example, that we say to Inspire, well, can we rent out space, one of the meeting rooms at defined times, and if somebody needs to speak to us, the chances are they can still do that that day and come back at a later time. We don't want to do that, of course. We want to deal with it there and then as convenient as possible. But that's the other option, is that if somebody does need that private conversation and those rooms are not available, they can arrange and have a chat here the same day. Again, that isn't as convenient as it might be, but in the 18 months so far, we've not had anybody request that. But I take the concern on board, absolutely. So just my next point to ask. So every risk report then that drops through the door is deliberately on the back page as it goes through the contact points that are there. But I think, as I said in the town parish forum, we'll take that back and look at what we do around it and make that more prominent, because obviously if there's people who are not aware the contact point is there, then we need to obviously make sure that's the case and people are aware. I can only probably say again, the reason that the other contact points are there for a day a week, and this is 3 days a week in West Bridgeford, is just down to demand, and we flex it around. We would naturally change that if there was high demand and we had people queuing out the door. So I hope, again, there's that flexibility in place there. If you take, I think it was the location that you were thinking of, we've already thought ahead in terms of, well, if it's not this location, what could be the others then? And that goes back to what we did with the customer access strategy back at the start of 2022, to say, let's keep reviewing these sites. Are they fit for purpose? Are they meeting the needs of customers? So but exactly, yeah. And again, if that is a perception, if people don't feel they know about it, we need to do something about that. So we'll look at ways and means in terms of making that a lot more prominent. What we found with risk reports is it's deliberately on that back page. So when it drops to the letterbox, people see a front page or a back page. If that's the only thing that they read, then hopefully they get information. But it sounds like it needs to be more prominent. So we'll change that.
And could you let the staff know that, in terms of, well, certainly how impressed we all were in terms of and how they do their job and how well they do their job.
Absolutely will. Yeah, no, thank you for that. We do have an internal staff newsletter where compliments are real. It's the most read part of the update. As you might imagine, people take a massive amount of um, pleasure in hearing that sort of feedback. You know, they can work and do an especially difficult job. I can't tell you how much I obviously hear day in, day out, and the sorts of calls and inquiries they get, and they're very tough, and it's exceptionally sensitive at times. So thank you. I really appreciate it, and we'll absolutely ensure they hear back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Oh, Councillor Barney.
It is related. So I think Councillor Palmer is a really good point, and I've embarrassingly confessed that in all the time I've been a councillor in the 14 parishes when I was county council, I've never once mentioned anything about the customer service centres that are available to local people. In all the reports I've written for community magazines and for, I've never once mentioned, and I just think actually it's a completely blindingly obvious thing that I should have been doing. And I wonder if there's a way that we could, from this committee, suggest that, you know, remind ourselves for our own patch where our closest, in my case, would be East League, particularly for county councillors. I mean, we're usually scratching heads thinking, what can we put in of interest? So I missed a trick there, bad councillor confession, but I think it's a good point.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a sort of related point. You had on the screen before a list of what the main topics of inquiry our contact centre was dealing with. As it's a walk-in centre, they have no idea what people are going to say. I would love to see a table that showed how many of them are asked questions about things and topics that have nothing to little to do with the borough council. Based on especially the fact that we saw that the county council doesn't operate any walk-in customer service centres. So my question is that a factor? I assume it is. Have you quantified it at all? And B, what sort of training and support do our staff get to do it? Because it's not very satisfying for them to be saying, we're a frontline service, I'm going to direct you to this other service, and you got to ring them up or go online or wait in a queue because they don't operate anything like this. So one of the last calls I heard today was that very good in terms of somebody again frustrated that it was a county council based query. So we very much appreciate. I wouldn't like to speculate as to a statistic of how many calls we get, but we signpost a lot. I would say possibly as much as 1 in 10 calls we get. Yeah. Have we put in actual training for that, or have the staff just had to learn by attrition on the job?
Yeah,
it
depends.
They're diligent customer service professionals, of course, so they make it their job to know these things.
Absolutely. They'll try and signpost to the quickest way possible. Obviously, in the digital area, a lot of ways, the quickest way to get something answered is through a particular direct mailbox. And that's hopefully testament to some of the partners around the county that the quickest way if somebody does put something in digitally is the quickest way it will get answered. Now, that's not always the case, but they'll try and signpost to the right person or the right agency as quickly as possible. They really want to help people. Ultimately, they don't just want to put them in a direction that doesn't help them. They'll listen out and hear if there's a quicker and shorter way that they can get that person's question answered. They will absolutely try and help them.
I've just thought of a slight follow-up. Sorry. And this is perhaps into that grey area. We received a presentation in this group a couple of groups back from MTVH, and how to get in touch with them, how to councillors to engage with them, and clearly that's a vital service. I've got housing queries in my very rural ward with very few social housing, but it's still one of the things that keeps me busy. Obviously they're not there alongside us in these centres, and their method of being contacted is pretty remote as well, but it is a borough area of statutory responsibility overall. So how do we deal with that issue specifically around housing? Because obviously it would be great if we could deal with those in the here and now, as opposed to actually sending somebody back through an MTVH remote process.
Obviously, I think we've already got the respective scrutiny process to try and deal with that. If you've heard from MTVH, I think it would probably have been answered at that point. I don't want just to signpost you to another committee, but it's a tricky one in terms of that housing provider has set that up in a way that I hope makes it as easy as possible for those issues to get solved. It is very tricky. It is very tricky. I think again, if that responsibility was with us, you might get a different offer. I think some of the feedback we get is how, I mean, we've got a service level agreement to try and answer calls in under a minute, and we do a fairly good job of actually hitting that. But yeah, it's almost a case of, because that service has evolved into where it is, it's difficult to answer a question around it. All I can say is that I think that, like I say, other scrutiny groups have looked at ways in which to, you know, try and increase and get better communication for queries and when they come through. If there is still a lot of frustration around any particular other service that was still under our remit, I'd probably just keep feeding back that there's that frustration, and we'll work with that provider to try and see if we can help at all. I appreciate how tricky that is, though.
I guess it's just it's obviously a service. It's something that we which we have a statutory responsibility, but the actual service model is delegated. It's devolved out to a social landlord company, but who aren't then achieving the same standards as we're offering, perhaps for services we deliver directly. And yet this is one of the most important areas that we have over responsibility for. I'm not asking for a response. I don't expect you to respond. It's a director or portfolio holder sort of thing to consider, really, isn't it? But I appreciate what you're saying. Thank you.
Councillor Wheeler.
Just come on that point as well. So like I say, I think the customer service team do a great job in terms of signposts. I've been there when they do to get the county council details. I mean, although there's not official walk in place at County Hall, the reception will, you know, help people. And I had one today when I was there, the reception had just popped off the toilet, so I was, you know, I given them my bill already for my reception. That's how bad it got. You see, we like the councillors try and help, but they have got that there. But I think our customer service just shows with the amount of location we have, the focus we put on it. But also, you know, Ed does meet with the head of customer service, the county council, and other customer service heads to do that collaboration together. So that does help in terms of the overall message, because as all councils dealing with the same similar issues, you can imagine that dashboard of the 5 team issue. I put 50p on the fact that it's very similar across the other areas as well. And if we can, just on the earlier point, Chairman, about why we went to move from, you know, Gordon Road to the library. When we went to Gordon Road at the time as well, that was before my time as portfolio holder. Gordon Road was quite poorly from an economic point of view. There was 3 or 4 empty units. It was seen as the real poor relation. There was a lot of work when we were involved with the West British Mass Planning to look at that. And actually, we moved there before to help the football. And actually, not saying we're directly linked or not, but we'll take credit for it. When we left, you know, every single unit was put on there. There were people waiting for the unit we had. And so I think it actually made sense at the time to come out as well, because we weren't sort of needed there anymore. We can get the more economic activity going in. So, and at the time when we went into County Court with the police station, we still weren't sure. Again, we still got quite high numbers. Weren't sure the impact, was it a COVID temporary blip or not? And I think the trend, I get the metrics regularly from Ed looking through it as well. Obviously, a lot more face to face to phone, email as technology is going, and with AI we're bringing in another tool. So I think I'd be surprised if it does jump back up again. If it does, like I say, there is that flexibility. No, I don't think it will either. So it's trying to also adapt as well to customer trends as well, like any business will try to do. But I think, like, point around £50,000 savings, a huge amount of money for our budget in relation to what we do there. So though money was a big factor, of course it was. I think the fact we got economically, which British Town said they're up again, and for the library point of view, because like as we said, next to the Bridgeford car park, the shop mobility is right next close to it. You've got the disabled car parking spaces, 100 yards from the front door, and again the library or customer service, that one-stop shop. I think it's shown it's really works well so far.
Thank you. Right, so we've had a very good debate on this. So is everybody happy to accept the recommendations, the report? Show of hands, please. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the work programme. And going to the agenda, we've got for July 2026 council tax policy changes and Article 4. And it's been recommended about that if we could start the next meeting in July earlier at 6 p.m. to allow time for discussion for these 2 items, because they're both quite, meaty items, should I say. Is everybody okay with the 6 p.m. start for the July? Yes. Show of hands. Brilliant. Thank you. In October 2026, we have MTVH coming back, and that's on the agenda item. January 2027, we have review of debt collection agents by RBC in line with the outcome of the government's consultation on council tax and enforcement. And we have got road sweeping, and we haven't got anything yet for April 2027. So that's the work program up until now. If you've got,
We've got the environment guys coming back. haven't we?
but that would be in July because we said
May move it to July.
may move it to July now.
Or did we see, but I didn't see the economic impact report stuff, the extra stuff I asked for, that was next year, wasn't it? We're asking them to do back.
Next year.
But in July.
Oh, in July, oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, because then we can get all the figures and everything. That's why Councillor Billion recommended moving to July. So yeah, if you've got any other items, do submit it to the COG for consideration. But yeah, that's it for now. So thank you everybody for your patience. I hope everybody has a good Easter break, and I call this meeting to